This episode of Plastic Weekly is brought to you by Domingo Stefan and the rest of my Patreon supporters who help make this show by donating $1 or $2 each week. Domingo, I hope your stickers made it to Berlin in one piece. Thanks so much for helping out. This week's episode profiles a kid from a secluded part of North America who crossed the continent to chase his dream of setting the big time. And by his mid-20s, he had set his first World Cup. We talk about how he got there, and he shares what he learned each step of the way. And talking to me right now from, I think, the car in his driveway is Kaleb Thomas, route setter from Victoria, BC. How are you doing, man?
Hey man, how are you?
I'm doing great today. Thanks for making the commute from I guess your house into your car. What's the deal with taking this call in your car?
I don't know. I always do phone meetings in my car. Actually, I like the Bluetooth. You can like move around in here and stuff, and it's also quiet. I got some roommates and a dog, and my dishwasher seems to kind of always be on, so it's like quiet here. It's nice.
I can appreciate that. Hopefully, it's like good audio quality. I'm down for that.
There's
Um,
some deer in my yard right now too, actually. So I got like a nice view.
Man, it sounds like paradise out in Victoria. It's just like wildlife walking around. That's pretty cool. I just want to talk to you about route setting, but the first thing I want to cover is kind of your background because you're a young guy. You're 26 right now, right?
Yep, 26.
Yeah, so there's only so much professional life to cover, and I think it's really interesting how you've kind of gotten to set at really high levels already in your life. And so if I'm looking for background, I kind of have to start all the way at the beginning. So straight up, where did you actually grow up?
So I consider myself from Newfoundland. I guess I was technically born in Toronto, but my parents moved me from there to St. John's when I was like 3 months old, and then I lived there until I was 20.
Okay. What did your parents do out there?
My parents are like my whole family's super musical. My parents were actually in a band together for a long time. That was like I guess it was like a popular band, especially in Newfoundland and in Canada too. Now they've kind of like settled into different jobs in the industry. My mom has been a private music school teacher for 20 plus years at the same place, a really awesome school in St. John's. And my dad is like a sound engineer. And he also does like event management stuff now and different things like that.
Huh, so why aren't you a musician at this point? What happened? What went wrong?
Maybe they asked the same question. I don't know. I played music the whole time growing up. Like I definitely, music's like a huge part of my life for sure. I still like own a bunch of guitars and play almost every day. And anyone who knows me well knows it's something I'm passionate about. But I don't know. Guess it wasn't the profession I was interested in.
Okay. So your parents weren't climbers. Did they kind of push you into any athletic stuff as a kid?
No, like they didn't push me into anything. My parents are I had good parents for sure. Like they didn't force me to do anything. Like they definitely gestured towards more musical activities, obviously. But like I played sports growing up. I mean, like any kid in Canada, I played hockey from whatever age to whatever age, and played soccer and t-ball or whatever. You know what I mean? All the stuff your parents can put you in the summer, keep you busy.
Yeah, I don't, I've never been to Newfoundland, but my impression of it is like a pretty culturally rich place, but with somewhat limited economic opportunities. So as a kid and as a teenager there, is it the kind of place that most people expect to stay in, or do most people kind of plan on leaving?
I think mm, it's tricky because I think that like my mom is from Newfoundland and she spent time abroad or whatever. She's like traveled and she's lived in other places. But she like loves it there. You know what I mean? Like she loves the idea of going downtown and seeing the same people that she's seen for 20 years. She loves the little neighborhoods. She loves the kind of way people are. But at the same time, like her brother, for example, my uncle spent his whole life there growing up, and then like when he left, he's like, I will never go back. You know what I mean? Like I don't want the small town shit. I don't want to deal with the fact there's no jobs. You know what I mean? The weather is the worst you've probably ever seen in your life. So like you know what I mean? I think it's kind of hit or miss. I personally have no real desire to live there again. Also, like for what I'm doing for work, it would be a very there wouldn't be much there for me to do right now. And even like for traveling, it's very expensive to travel on and off the island, which is pretty like prohibitive.
The question is, so in a place like Newfoundland, climbing's not one of the first things you do. How did
No.
you get into rock climbing there?
I had a couple friends in school that basically I don't know if like someone had a birthday party, probably I think, and I don't think I was invited to it. And then they all got pumped on climbing. And I don't know. I guess I just was like tagging along, honestly, because I thought these guys were like cool guys and I wanted to be their friends. So I was pretty psyched on climbing all of a sudden. Um, and then I don't know. We all climbed together for like years, I guess, like the whole way through junior high and high school because they started like a youth team for us and stuff. And they coached us, and it was really cool. Like it was kind of a cool thing to be a part of there. I don't even know if any of those guys can really climb anymore. But anyway, yeah, that's how I kind of got into it. Was just like through my friends in school.
Tell me about that gym. You're talking about Walnuts, right?
Yeah, Walnuts. Yeah, Walnuts is cool. I haven't been there in so many years now because I haven't been back since I left. Um, but it's definitely small. But I mean, I think they're doing like as I said, I think that these guys are doing the best they can. I don't know. They just bought a bunch of holds, so I think they're trying really hard to kind of keep up with what's current. And I know they have some plan or something for a new facility. I'm not sure the details though.
Cool. So
Yeah, it's cool there. I don't know.
you were climbing in high school and stuff, and you said you were doing some competing. I mean, you guys were the only gym on the island, presumably. So if you were competing, where were you traveling to with these guys?
So yeah, like we tried to travel with the team, but it's like super expensive from Newfoundland. Like these poor kids there, like there's probably some strong kids there now that just have a hard time kind of getting moving because they don't get to do a lot of comps. So like we would do the two comps a year in Newfoundland, of course, because there's two and you do them, and then usually once a year we would travel for something. So I know like we went to Halifax one year for Tour de Bloc, which was like a huge deal for us, even though the comp was tiny. And we went to like an open boulder national, I think, or something at Joe Rockheads one year,
Cool.
and that was like a huge deal. And there was no youth or anything, so we were like competing in open or something. I don't even remember. And we went. The best trip we ever did actually was like when I was 18. The whole team flew to Vancouver to train for like a week with the Edge team. We like stayed with the kids from the Edge team.
Cool.
So which at the time was like Ryder Hoy and like Sean Baudouin and Alana Yip and Aisha Khan and these people that are now like kind of my friends and who I climb with in Vancouver. And then we also like climbed for a week in Squamish and stuff. And we trained with Andrew Wilson. So like, this was cool. Like we did all these little trips. Like the owner there, Leo, was our head coach, and he was kind of trying to expose us to as many different things as he could. It was cool.
That's really rad.
Yeah.
So this gym's also where you started route setting, and it sounds like you started setting there pretty young, eh?
Like basically when I started climbing there, I wanted to start route setting right away. I don't know what it was, but I was kind of psyched. I used to set like for like they had like a system there where you belay for memberships.
Yeah.
So they would like pay me for setting like in the same way. So like if I set for 2 hours, I'd get like a tick, which was like a fifth of a month pass or something. I don't know. And I would just set so much. And then when I graduated high school, they made me the head route setter there, and I did that for 2 years. And I don't know, I think I had like 10 hours a week or something of route setting that they like paid me for, and it was like the best 10 hours of my life.
How long were you setting at Walnuts before you were like, okay, I need to do something new. I got to get out there. Like, at what point did it hit you where you wanted to do more than just setting at Walnuts?
So I was setting there, like I guess from the time I graduated high school for like 2 years. I guess I was a head setter there for 2 years or something like that. And I really wanted to set comps because when you're in an isolated community where there's no other gyms, the only like media that you get about climbing is comps, basically, right? So I would see like whatever, like the Jody Mile Mario go-kart problem or like some final video or something, and like that's like what I wanted to do. Like in my mind, this was like that's what I have to do is I need to go set these comps or whatever, right? Um, so at the time, like Tour de Bloc was huge in Canada. So I was like trying to figure out like, how do I set these comps, what I do. So I was emailing like Tour de Bloc people, I was emailing gym people, I was doing all this stuff. I was trying to like set these comps because I knew that I needed to do something more than setting at Walnuts. And man, it got me like basically nowhere. And I was like super duper at the point actually where I was kind of giving up on route setting because it seemed like there was no future. Because like you can't make a lot of money in a small community as a route setter, and then nobody from any of the big cities is writing you back. And you're like, well, okay, what the hell do I do? So I actually like applied for chef school and stuff, and I was kind of like done, really. And then I was on Route Setters Anonymous one day, back when it was a forum. I don't. Do you remember, Tyler, when it was a forum when it
Like
wasn't Facebook?
rootsetters.org,
Yeah,
the
rootsetters.org is what
yeah,
it
I
was.
just I just remember like Alan Corneau was like the designated most
Yeah,
active guy on that forum all
yeah,
the time. Yeah, man.
yeah. So like this page was ridiculous, and I was like 19 or 20, and like probably thought I was the coolest guy on earth, and definitely like ego hotshot kind of kid. And I got on this forum, and I basically like I don't remember what I said, but I said some stuff about how like route setting in Canada was like an old boys club, and that like there was nobody that wanted anybody to advance, and that if you were like a young guy who wanted to route set, there was like no path for you to come up, and like no one would even write you back or like send you an email or anything like this, which like retrospectively was definitely like kind of an aggro approach to like dealing with my problem, but it worked kind of like poetically. I got a phone call within about a week from Dustin Curtis, who was basically like, okay, man, get your visa out, buy a plane ticket, you're coming to Toronto, you're going to set a Tour de Bloc with us. And I was like, holy shit, like this is crazy, I'm going to go to Toronto. I never had like traveled for setting. I didn't even know that like you could do that, really, you know what I mean, even though that
Yeah.
was obviously the goal. And then I set a Tour de Bloc with Dustin, and like even on the crew for that comp was like Sean Hunter, who's now obviously like doing really really well, and Andreas Lurch, who's a guy I set with a lot, who's doing really well. And I don't know, this was a crazy experience.
So at that point, like Dustin Curtis was really making a name for himself.
Yeah,
He was like now the head route setter at True North, and he was a
yeah,
respected guy. He was about to set a few World Cups and stuff.
yeah.
So you get there as a kid that's only been setting in your own little gym in Newfoundland. What was that experience like?
Okay, well, I like to say that like uh, setting a True North was definitely like one of the most pivotal experiences of like my whole setting career. I learned like two very important things. A, that you could be a professional route setter, because like Dustin at the time was obviously traveling a lot, and he's telling you this story. Oh, I was in Calgary and I was in this place and I was wherever, you know what I mean? And also like he's like paying rent at his house and like has a car and like these things that like whoa, he's living,
Yeah.
holy crap. Um, so I kind of learned that you could be a professional route setter, and that was like very important. And then the other thing that I learned was that I was really not that good at route setting. uh, had a long way to go. Uh, Me and Dustin regularly talk about the one good boulder that I set at that comp. There was
Yeah.
one. It was cool. It had two bosses and two friction chrome domes, and I think that was it. And it was
So
cool.
it probably like wasn't even cool because of your setting. It was like you just picked really good
No, I just
holes,
had
right?
the four coolest holes in the gym,
Yeah, man.
and it was on a wall on its own, so it just looked cool probably.
Yeah.
And everything else was just like crimpy Gaston, like vert wall V2, I think.
Huh. When
Oh
you
man, I didn't know. And the other thing is like I super duper didn't know what it meant to set like a comp boulder that was like supposed to make a field divide itself. And I super duper didn't know what it meant to set a dope boulder over the grade of V7. And I super duper didn't realize how strong the comp climbers are and how weak I was. I wasn't like the best climber in Newfoundland or even one of the best guys or whatever, but I was like relative to the community there, I was pretty strong, I guess, you know what
yeah.
I mean? So I was like, and I was young and stupid, and I'm like, I'm so good at climbing and I'm so good at route setting and I know what's going on. And then I went to this comp and was like, I'm really crappy at climbing and I'm really crappy at route setting and I have absolutely no clue what's going on. And it was definitely at this moment that I kind of realized that I needed to go somewhere else. I remember I was applying for jobs like in Montreal and Toronto because they were close to where I was. And I don't think True North wanted to hire me because I set really crappy at the comp they paid me to come set for.
Yeah.
And nobody in Montreal, I think, wanted to hire me at the time because I didn't know any French and I had no reputation. So why would they? You know what I mean? And then I don't know. I don't know how we kind of ended up. I don't know how we ended up in Victoria. Well, like my girlfriend at the time actually had applied for a job in Victoria, and then I started applying for gyms out here and in Vancouver. And that's kind of how I ended up out here, I guess.
Okay, so you get out here. You said you were setting at Crag X was the first gym you're at, and you've mentioned to me in the past that you learned a lot from the guys here, and you kind of talked about a type of setting identity out west. Can you tell me a bit about what was different about setting on Canada's west coast?
Yeah, so I learned a ton at Crag X for sure. Like Crag X, like when I was the head setter there, it wasn't like the new Crag X that they have now. It was the
Yeah.
old gym. And it was a cool, like it was a good old gym, I think. Like I would say it was really good. And the guys here, like they have a setting style, especially at Craig X, that's like just kind of super smooth, super flowy, kind of like buttery roots. You know what I mean? If you were to describe it to somebody new, just to like setting there, and like they kind of have like a style that they're big on and they're distinct about. And to be honest, it is like a really good style for commercial roots. I think like people like to buy that style. I think it's like a nice flavor. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think there was like a lot to learn about that. The other thing about setting here that was also cool is that the bouldering walls at that gym, or the walls that we used to set boulders on, which were really just the bottoms of the root walls, kind of,
Yeah.
they were like these big, huge, flat panel surfaces, and the gym had some volumes, and we had some nice holds, and I had this other guy root setting with me who's a good root setter based in Alberta right now, this guy Tristan. And me and Tristan would just like, and this other young guy, Ryan, we would set all these crazy boulders that we'd see like from the World Cup and from Instagram or whatever, you know what I mean? And this was like cool because we had this gym that was a good space for making these types of boulders. And we just kind of got to suck in there for like 3 years, like trying to make these
Just
problems that were kind of probably crappy, but we thought they were sick. You know what I mean? Like we made a lot of like dumb videos and stuff like this, but it was cool because it was like a space where we got to really learn. Because it was okay for us to make maybe not the best boulders there.
okay. So you like since then in terms of like where you've been working, you've worked at a couple other gyms. You worked at Base 5, which is another Vancouver area gym, and then you
Yeah,
were also working at the Boulders in Victoria.
yeah.
You were kind of moving around a lot. What made you like you know, sometimes a business just gives you a better offer, and I get that. But is there something in you where you just need to always be working, you know, in a different place with different people?
Yeah, that comes up. I think one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to the comp setting and to doing clinics and traveling and stuff is I'm definitely really drawn to the idea of a new environment. Like I find that that's like I get I feel stale sometimes in the same environment all the time. And I'm definitely like psyched on the idea of being different places. Although I don't know if that is actually a contributing factor as to why I kind of moved to gyms a little bit. Um, like maybe it is. It's hard to think about it in retrospect. Like I took my job at Base 5 because I was really excited about it. I saw like a future for that setting program, and it really needed to be updated. It was like an old school program that I don't know what it was, but I was like really drawn to the idea of like changing the setting program at that gym. Like I kind of like begged the owner Dan to like let me do that. I don't even know why. You know what I mean? I was just like, this gym could be so much better or something. I don't know. I had it like in my mind. And I really liked my job there, and it was really good, but I didn't like Vancouver. And that
Okay.
was like one of the biggest reasons why I took my job at the Boulders, is because, and I had even said to like Dan when I worked at Base 5, I was like, man, I'm here like for 5 years for sure, unless a good job like comes up on the island, because I don't like Vancouver.
Okay. Huh.
um, and then that's kind of a lot of why I took the job at the Boulders.
Yeah, well, the Boulders also like I ran an episode on it. It is it's a big deal in Canada. It's the biggest wall you're gonna get.
Oh, dude,
Uh, And of course, like with
That's
an
the sickest wall ever.
yeah, it's dope. So you got the job offer there. What kind of like, ultimately you're just setting at a gym, but what was different about setting at a place like that where you are hosting lots of people that are training for international stuff? How did it change what you had to set?
Yeah, so like that was the other big reason why I took the job. Like obviously there was more reasons than just Victoria, duh. But like a huge thing with the boulders is obviously as you say, it's the so I've always felt like more comfortable setting bouldering than lead routes. And I did like in the last year and a half try to turn more of a focus to lead because I felt like it was a weakness of mine both as a climber and a setter. And going to boulders is like an obvious place to go work on that. It's the only place where you get to set like hard 513 and 514 several times a year. Like, I mean, I don't know how many like 513 plus and 514 routes I've set in like the last year and a half, but it's like definitely more than anybody else in Canada just because of my job there. You know what I mean? Because that gym has so many hard routes. And then on top of that, you get regular communication with like Sean or Elan. Delaney was there for like a year. Like I climb with Becca Frangos every
Look
week
at
on the
you on a
routes I've been
first
setting.
name basis, just dropping all these names. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry, screw it. Like now I feel like an ass. But like you know what I mean? It's definitely nice because at the same time, like these people are all super nice, and they know that I care about improving my craft. So like when you set like a route at that gym and it's like at the limit of what you can set, and you've got somebody like whoever, like Sean McCall, and he's like telling you that your route is great because of this and terrible because of this, and it's not like the World Cup because they would never do this thing. It's like very important feedback. You know what I mean? Like, and it's also like invaluable feedback you're not going to get anywhere else.
How many routes would you have up in that gym at one time?
So that gym, it sits between 35 and 50 routes, not including like what's on the speed wall.
Yeah.
Because we set like the speed wall for like the youth programs. I actually like, so I don't work for Boulders anymore. Like technically, I ended my official position with them, just because it was kind of crazy to have a full time job and set as many comps that I was, and
Yeah.
this agreement wasn't really working for both parties. But I still set there. Like I have the contracts to set for the lead wall. So the lead wall has between 35 and 50 routes on it. And then basically we try to have the lift in there once every 6 weeks or so, I would say. And then usually when the lift's in, we set between 10 and 16 new routes, depending on what's going on. So it's definitely like it's a quote unquote slow turnover relative to some other commercial facilities. But these routes aren't the same, and the clientele is not the same. Like you're not setting disposable routes in there. You're setting like good routes that can stand the test of time a little bit. And the gym, the people that climb there treat it more like a really great outdoor crag that gets 10 fresh new routes every 3 months or every 6 weeks or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What uh
Um,
what
yeah.
changes about your setting and your forerunning process when you have a really different intention with the routes like that?
Well, like it's hard to say. Like I would actually say like overall the routes at the boulders are maybe a little more simple just because the height of the wall.
Yeah,
Um,
that's always something I find if you're setting off a lift, and especially when you're setting a tall wall, you kind of trend towards stuff that's a little bit easier to set and doesn't require you to get your body on the wall as much because you're kind of disconnected being in the lift. But like at the same time at this gym, you're trying to set stuff for a really high level. So how does that all even out?
like, um, like obviously it's not that we like don't set creative stuff because that's like not true. We obviously have like lots of bouldery and weird sequences, and we have all these kinds of things that you expect to see like for comp training routes. Uh, but like I don't know, like setting in the lift is just it's like a weird skill that you get used to. Like the first time you set in a lift, you set super boring and you don't know what you're doing because you're not used to it. And then the more you spend time in the lift, the more it gets easy to envision what you're doing. Like I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe because I guess I remember the first time I sat in the lift at the boulders was for a comp like whatever 3 or 4 years ago, and I felt like I had no clue what I was doing, and like I think I even like set part of my route on a rope, um, because like I couldn't get my head around the lift,
Yeah.
and now like I mostly set in a lift because Craig X has one as well. and usually you have a lift for comps. And I actually find now I have a hard time getting into a creative process when I'm setting on a rope, because like my brain is like transitioned to like making weird stuff on a lift.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just said different, like I don't know, like when you said bouldering, you can put weird holds on the wall and create odd moves like before testing, you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
kind of just have the same ideas. Like testing hard lead routes on a 18-meter wall is a huge pain in the ass. Like no one's going to tell you it isn't. It's super, it can suck, especially like if you're tired. But I mean, you just do it. I don't know. You go up and you do what you got to do.
When you're like actually putting up individual moves on the wall, are you kind of consciously thinking about specific people? Especially, I'm sure you do at the higher grades because there's so few people climbing those.
Yeah.
But rather than putting up a climb to hit a particular grade, which might serve a few hundred people, do you find you'll really be focused on particular people when you're looking through those moves?
Yeah, so well, to be honest, that's how I always set. Like, I every time I set anything, I usually have like a person or two people in mind. Like even if I'm setting commercially, I have like a few go-to people in my head that I'll use like even all over the country as like, okay, this boulder is going to be for this person. And that's kind of how I do everything when I set. And if the route comes out to be like whatever grade, it doesn't really matter because it's like the route was for that person. Like, I don't know. Okay, so this is going to sound really funny. But okay, so whenever I teach clinics, especially for commercial stuff, when I'm talking to people, I talk about like a character. Oh my God, like there's so many people that are about to laugh if they know anything about this. But I have this character that I talk about, Fat Mom. Okay, so
Yeah,
like
man.
I have a fat mom. I know who she, or no, my mom's not fat. That came out weird. But I have a fat mom in my mind, a human being who I can think of who's Fat Mom.
Okay.
And I tell everybody in the clinic, I'm like, okay, you need to think about who Fat Mom is, okay? Because she's important. Fat Mom has been climbing for like 5 or 6 years, maybe 10 years. She's a good climber. She knows what she's doing. You know what I mean? Like she's had 10 different pairs of climbing shoes in her life. She knows the difference between a good 5'8" and a good 5'9" because she climbs, right? She's a real deal climber. But like Fat Mom is never going to climb 10A. You know what I mean? She thinks she is. She gets close, but she's never going to. And being able to think about what Fat Mom wants, like when you're setting dope 5'9", is like important. You know what I mean? It's also like you're one person who's like Fat Mom in your mind. There's like 100 of those at everybody's climbing gym. You know what I mean? And that's why it's relatable. Like even when I just said it to you, you were like, I can think of a person. You know what I mean? Like I know who you're talking about. And every root setter who's listening to this is like, oh yeah, I know who that like 5'9" dad is. You know what I mean? Like the dad who never climbs 10A but is there like every Wednesday morning at 8:30. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
So like whenever I'm setting in the big gym, it's the same thing. Like you like obviously when you're setting the hardest route in there, you're pretty much specifically thinking about Elan because Elan is like the strongest guy that's consistently climbing there. So like I don't know, I set a route there a couple weeks ago that the whole time I was up there going like, Elan can't hold that. Elan is not going to hold this. Elan cannot reach that crap. There is no way Elan's foot's going to stick. Because I'm trying to make like a project for him. And usually when this happens, he kind of just does it because he's kind of a freak.
Yeah.
But, you're having that process and, I set routes for Becca like a lot in there where I'm like trying to make the holds like way too far away from each other. And the moves are just like way too big. Like I bring the measuring tape and I make sure Becca can't reach the holds without jumping. And all this kind of stuff, because you're trying to like make things that are challenging for like that specific person.
Yeah.
But likely the thing that's like beautiful about picking a single person and setting for them is usually like it relates. Like if I'm setting a route that's like FU Elan the whole time for 70 moves, it's also going to be a good training route for Sean or whoever, you know what I mean? Or whoever is coming to the gym that's training there like that month or something.
Okay. Do you feel like it leaves you with some blind spots? Like, do you feel like if you're setting for, particular people that there might be some people out there that aren't served as well on the routes you set?
Well, I think like for certain specific routes for sure. But I think like as an overall, like what I present as a route setter, I don't just like only set for a handful of specific people. You try to like have different characters that you're building routes for. You know what I mean? There's different competitors, different climbers. Um, so like I think like overall you can still present like a product that appeals to a bunch of different people. And I think the thing is like if you set like 13A warm up for Becca. Um, you know what I mean? So it has to be a specific way and a specific hold type to make sure that she gets warmed up on that grade, and can still climb the whole route or whatever. You also know that that route's probably going to appeal to a lot of other people. You know what I mean? Because it's going to be a 13A that's like really consistent with no rest, with kind of open-handed holds, with no really, really big moves. And that's probably going to appeal to like a pretty wide range of clientele.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. So through all this time out BC, you started doing, like regional comps, obviously some provincial comps. You did some national stuff as well. And then at the Boulders, you end up setting for this IFSC climbing camp. And this was a mix of like open age and youth age competitors, right?
Yeah, so just to get that timeline like super bang on, the first IFSC climbing camp was actually right at the time I started working at Base 5.
Okay.
And yeah, that camp was really good. Um, we set for like 3 different divisions. There was like a pro division and a middle division and like a beginners division or whatever I guess you want to call it. And there was all these international climbers there. Like Adam Ondra was there as like a big name. Um, Mina Markovic and some of the big names on the Lead World Cup that on the time were there. And the biggest thing though that was sick was that the IFSC, one of the IFSC chief route setters, Adam Paselnik, he was there. And Adam's definitely one of the really good ones. You know what I mean? He was the chief at Chamonix for several years, not this year. And I didn't mean that like that or anything. Anyway, moving on quickly. He's like a really good chief. And then, so the setting crew for that event was like me and Adam Paselnik and Josh Larson. And then this super awesome guy from Edmonton, Lloyd King. And also Sebastian Powell from here. I'm trying to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. And basically what we did is we set all the routes for the comp with the competitors or with the like international athletes. So like me and Sean McCall set a route together. And like Lloyd set a route with Maya Vidmar. You know what I mean? And I think Adam Paselnik set a route with Adam Ondra and stuff like this. So this was like really an incredible experience. And it was also like the first time that I was ever like testing routes at that level. Like I'd never foran routes like that hard ever. And we set like, even like me and Andrew Wilson set a route. Mostly Andrew Wilson set a route and I stood in the lift and took credit.
Okay.
Like that was like a training route for like Elan. And we were just building it because we had time, and it was like so hard. Like it was just all these like V10 boulder problems like in a row. And then Adam Ondra like flashed it. And it was like,
Jesus.
you know what I mean? And you're just like, it's like the first time that in your life you like see somebody who's like climbing at that level. And you're just, like, because like, man, I had seen Sean and Elan climb before, and then I saw Adam Ondra climb this green route at this thing, and I was like, okay, well that's a whole other price range. Like that's a different level. It's crazy.
That's whack. What did you learn
And
from setting with Adam, somebody that had experience on the IFSC World Cup circuit?
um there was like a bunch of like little things. Like I'm trying to kind of hammer out one specific thing. Like one thing that was definitely really noticeable with Adam in particular, he's very professional. Like he's definitely like, obviously you get a range of personalities and different vibes from different people, but Adam was a really professional guy. Remember, he was like well organized, and he spoke very clearly about his ideas and what he wanted. Um, and that was like the big thing. And then also like the work ethic. Like he did a lot of testing on that comp, and like setting with Simon for a lot of years, you see that kind of work ethic with testing, like just, and same with like Fred, just like so much testing. But like it was nice to see that in a rope comp, like from Adam too. And it also like solidified to me that like, that's definitely how you have to be, you know what I mean? Because I think when you see these things from like local people, you're kind of like, maybe they're overdoing it. But then when you see that the international setters are the same way, it's like, okay, well, obviously this is the process. You know what I mean? Like you just have to test a lot and you need to be tired, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. And so after this IFSC climbing camp, eventually you got an opportunity to actually set at a Lead World Cup last season in Imst.
Yeah.
I want to know as much as I can about this. From my perspective, I've been kind of close to some World Cups, some bouldering World Cups. I've kind of got to watch from the edges.
Mhm.
Um, but you want so badly to hear what the setters are talking about. You want to hear about the struggles of organizing it and what they expect from stuff. So you were finally like part of the crew. It was you and a bunch of other international setters. Was it different from what you expected in any way?
Well, yeah, it was an amazing experience, and I definitely expected them to be like harder to work with and much more like dismissive of the fact that I was there.
Who were the
That's like what I
guys you were
expected.
working with?
So I was super lucky. Like so the crew that I had, the chief was this guy Paul DeWild, who is actually like I think that was his last comp that he was doing, and he was around like from the kind of beginning of the IFSC,
Okay.
and he's like a French route setter who did lead. I think he like runs the gym in Pole in France, the training facility there. I think. So I had him, and then I had this guy Jens Brannick, who is like one of the kind of top level IFSC chiefs for lead. He was like the chief for World Championships in Paris last year, and he did like Briançon this year, and he's like definitely one of the really really good guys in lead. And then the third guy was an Austrian guy named Florian Mernig. And this guy was also really, really awesome. He was like a really good route setter and a really good forerunner. And maybe of everybody, like the most kind of soft spoken and like easiest to work with. You know what I mean? This guy's like super kind of chill and nice.
All right. And so while you were there, like, you were, what was the specific title you had? I don't know if you were like an apprentice or an intern.
So I was an aspirant route setter. That's what they
Aspirant.
call it.
Okay. Nice. Good.
Aspirant.
Okay. So, like, aside from you probably like running to get them coffee all the time, what kind of stuff were you helping them out with?
So that's the other thing is like they they very much like treated me as if I was like a member of the crew like any of them. So like I didn't have to go get coffee for anybody. Like it wasn't like that at all. It basically so the first day I was there, the first we spent the first 2 days working on the finals, and then basically me and Paul DeWild set the bottom of the women's final, and Flo and Jan set the top of the women's final. And then Flo and Jan set the bottom of the men's final, and me and Paul set the top of the men's final. And that was like our first day was setting these two routes. And it was a super funny day. Like Paul is hilarious. He has like decent English, but not amazing English. And I have like a little French. And like between us, we were definitely making it go. But it was super funny. And just the working and like the vibe was really good. You know what I mean? Like we were putting up silly ideas and we were taking stuff down, and it was really kind of chill. And then we spent like a whole day kind of forerunning the finals. We like foreran them in the morning. We went to the lake and ate food and had gelato and like took naps, and then like went back in the nighttime to forerun the finals at night because the finals would be at night. Um,
Oh,
so
that's interesting.
they really wanted to make sure. Well, actually, we can get into another thing on temperature if you
Do it.
want, like later, because I applied this. Anyway, it's another thing. But anyway, so they wanted to test the finals at night, which makes total sense. Which was like probably the coolest moment in my whole life. Like, dude, it when you're like pumped out, screaming, doing like the last moves on the men's final for a lead World Cup at like 10:30 in the night under the lights on a 24-meter wall in the Austrian mountains. That's the coolest crap you'll ever do as a route setter.
That sounds sick
Because
as
you're
hell.
just like, you're in the middle of the abyss and you're just like, you're like trying to climb some route you can't climb, and you're like pulling on holds, and like when you fall, there's like no quick draws for the end of the wall, so you take like a whatever, like a 14-meter fall, and you're still 10 meters off the ground. It was so cool. Like this was the coolest thing. Um, and then for semis, we did kind of the same thing. We switched teams up. I worked with Jan, and Paul worked with Flo. We switched bottoms and tops of the routes like we did for the finals. And then qualification, I set a qualifier all by myself. Like I concepted it by myself. And then me and Paul like foreran it and made some changes. And then me and Jan foreran it, and then Jan changed everything. And it was okay, but it was funny. And but it was good. Like the route worked out nice, and we kept most of like the same ideas. It was just Jan like smoothed out the consistency is basically like the biggest thing. He thought the route was like inconsistent. But it was cool that they kind of let me put up a concept all by myself, and then like I worked on it with Jan and Paul. So like that was pretty, you know what I mean? Because I felt like I got to like put on all my own ideas instead of like being influenced by somebody else, and then get like the real feedback on like where I was, like in particular, you know what I mean? And that was like super important.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was cool. Like I don't know, it was like kind of a relaxed pace, I would say. Like overall, like it was a lot of climbing, and I was very tired. But like the Europeans definitely like to eat a lot and like take lunch a lot. And there was definitely like multiple times we would kind of go to the lake in the middle of the day. But at the same time, like when you worked hard, you worked really hard. So I guess it's a balance. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
cool.
it sounds like it wasn't too stressful of an event, even given it being like an international World Cup.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't. I've never really super been one to get stressed at comps. Um, I don't know why. Like I don't know if I've got like something missing or whatever, but I usually just don't like I don't I'm invested and I care. And like of course I want to see things go really well, but I'm like very much on the side of like, man, once the comp's going, it's going and there's no point in being like stressed about stuff. And then the same thing like with the World Cup, it's like I don't know. I just wanted to go and do the best that I could and focus on doing nice work. And I mean being stressed about what those guys were going to think of what I was doing wasn't going to help me do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, I expected to go there and for those guys to be like, it's shit, take it down. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So the fact that they were even willing to work with me on stuff was like, this is better even than I thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
man.
there was no need to be stressed. I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, if you're working with a crew of professionals, then if they know what they're doing, it's not too bad, I guess. I'm gonna make you go on a tangent about temperature because you brought it up, and that sounds like the kind of boring shit I'm super psyched about.
Okay, so like the thing with temperature, so this is one of the biggest things that I learned at the World Cup was the temperature thing. And I never thought about this, and I felt so dumb. But they kind of like they talk about this a bunch. Like there was one time like we went to go get some holds for like a route, and Jan was like, no, like you can't use black holds on this part of the wall because this part of the wall gets sun like through the whole afternoon, and if you use the black holds in the route, like won't be fair for the climbers in the afternoon. And I was like, uh-huh, like that's another thought level that I didn't
Yeah.
know existed. So and then okay, so then I'm setting this comp with Andreas at the Hive last year, and it was the national series in BC. And any now there's like, I'm not gonna before I even start this, I'm not gonna say that temperature is the number one reason why the result at national series and at that comp didn't have the best results. I think that like I made some tweaks to some boulders that made the boulders a little too hard.
Okay.
But anyway, um, regularly at the Hive North Shore comp for the last couple of years, it's been like me and Dustin Andreas or me and Andreas and somebody's like decent setting crew, and we always nail the qualification. Like we've gotten the level for qualification has always been just like perfection. You know what I mean? Really great spread. And finals is like always too hard. And we think we have it like right every time. And like we've obviously proven that we understand the level because we got it right in the qualification, and then we always screw up the final. And then it was after we kind of screwed up the one recently or last year, last December, that I was like, oh my God, it's the freaking temperature. And it's because we set and floor on all the boulders, like in the morning or the afternoon when the gym is closed with regular lights on and no crowd. And then once they pack 200, because the Hive North Shore gets the craziest crowds. It's so busy there when they have comps. It's nuts. So they get 250 people in there, and they get they spend all this money on lights, and then they have these crazy hot lights. And then no wonder the boulders are too hard. You know what I mean? Like we think we've got it perfect, but then like you shine a couple of 1,000-watt lights or whatever the hell they are, 100-watt lights on the boulders, and you pack 250 people in there. Like no wonder the boulders are too hard.
Yeah, they've been under the cooking lamps for like hours, I
So
guess.
so there's all, and man, this actually was like a little thing that's like totally changed so many things I've done as like a setter in the last year. Like even at the Canadian Lead National, we were like we foreran the routes in the morning time on the second day, like the finals routes. because that gym was getting like mad sun through the glass, and it was
Mm-hmm.
heating the gym up really bad. And we made sure to forerun in the morning so that we would get the roots at the right level, like for when the comp would be running, and all these little things. And like I think it's also uh like I bet you if every like head root setter for competition like reflected really seriously about rounds that they had that were too hard, that they weren't quite sure why, that they might realize it had something to do with the temperature of the gym.
That's really interesting.
There's also a comp last year. Man, this made me crazy. Okay, there was a comp at Boulder House last year where we set this slab boulder, and the slab boulder was like super hard. Like it was for the women, and it was crazy. We had Alana and Allison and Yanni and like Lucy and I think Becca. We had a really strong field for this comp, and we had this crazy slab boulder, and I was so worried that it wouldn't go. And I remember that I had to open the door in the gym when I was like emceeing the comp, and I was like, man, the slab isn't gonna go. It's getting like too hot in here because the gym was getting too hot. And like during the second boulder, I like went and opened up this like big garage door at the front of Boulder House,
Yeah.
and all the crowd was like freezing because it got so cold. And I was on the
Awesome.
mic. I was like, okay, everybody, I'm so sorry that you're all cold. But if the door isn't open, none of the women are going to climb the slab boulder. You all have to deal with it. And then like all these people are like suffering, and like none of the women are climbing the slab, and it's way too hard. And then like Yanni was the last girl out, and she flashed the slab
Nice.
and did it and won the comp on the flash of the slab. And it was like so funny. Anyway, this was like a temperature control thing.
Yeah.
But I
That's a
think this
rad
makes a
story.
difference, man.
Yeah, I know for sure
So
it does. It's definitely one of those things though where like if you have yeah, if you've got one of those rounds where one problem never goes, like nobody manages to get to
yeah,
the top. It sucks cuz like there could be like a lot of factors into why it doesn't go, so it's always hard
yeah,
to tell what's what, but I mean, that's a thing, temperature that probably a lot of people don't think too much about. And you're totally right with the lights, especially at like big comps where they shine a lot of stuff on them. You're
yeah.
completely right, man.
And then, like at Tour de Bloc Nationals this year, I was really worried about it because we didn't have the chance to forum with the lights on.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what I was doing, but I was definitely like, when we started resetting for finals, I was like double checking that all the heat in the gym was off and stuff, and that like the air con was on, the ventilation was open because I was worried about that.
Yeah.
And I like still have a bit of a feeling that like women's four didn't go. Like actually, maybe like women's four was pushing the limit of what the girls could do. Like
That
we
was a
were
hard
definitely like
climb, man.
we were flexing on them for sure,
Yeah.
but also like I have a lot of faith in Alana and Allison, like especially. So I'm not afraid to give them boulders that are maybe too hard because I think that they can do them. But I wonder like if temperature played a role with that boulder because like I don't know. Anyway,
That's funny. Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. There's this thing that's I've like wanted a reason to buy one of these for so long. It's like an attachment to an iPhone. It's I don't know what you call it,
percent.
but it's shit. It's like a camera, but it just like shows you ambient temperature, right? So you like point it
Yeah,
at the wall and it shows you how hot everything is. And now
yeah.
that you've told me this, now I have a reason to buy one. Like I could never think of an excuse before, but I'm
Oh
totally
yeah,
gonna
there you
do
go.
that. That
I
sounds
want
like
one.
yeah, man, it's a good waste of money for me. That's awesome. All right.
And even Canadian Open Boulder Nationals. Sorry, because I've thought about this a lot.
Yeah.
um, Simon had a perfect result in the final. The boulders worked exactly as he had planned, and the gym had no extra lighting and was relatively empty for what could have been there for an Open Boulder National.
Huh.
Also, it was in Edmonton in March,
Yeah.
and the ambient temperature outside was minus 25,
Yeah,
and the
man.
temperature in the gym at the time was like pretty
Uh,
normal. It wasn't warm.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Huh.
So,
All right.
anyway.
Second last question.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so you've done you've set through every level now over basically the course of just 11 years, right? Like it's fairly short career. But you've been setting in a lot of places, and at your level, you start to get your own kind of identity. There's types of problems you like to set, and as you grow and as time goes by, your interests change and what kind of movements you like and stuff like that. Do you find that if you're going to do more setting at an international level, that you have to kind of put that personality away to set for those things, or is it okay for you to kind of express yourself in terms of what you put up on the wall when you get to World Cups and stuff?
I don't know. That's kind of a hard question because I've only done one like real international event. Um, because like it's something like the World Climbing Camp, where obviously you have international athletes there. You can feel free to be a little more creative with the routes because you're not super worried about a result. Like because you're more worried about like exposing the people at the camp to new movement styles. So like in this case, you can be a little more creative. But like, and the other thing is actually like the comp that I set is like Imst was the biggest wall I think that was kind of in the circuit, and the routes at Imst are naturally going to be less creative than the routes at say Villers or Chamonix or Briançon, because like in Imst the wall is so big that like you can't put in like a sequence, because like as soon as you put in like anything complicated, they can't see it from the ground, so they don't know what to do. Like they just can't do it. And B, it takes so much time that they'll never make it to the top of the route. And like even in IMS, like we had no tops in the finals, and we heard like from the finalists after that none of them had previewed the top half of the route. They'd only previewed the bottom half because the
Hmm.
strategy was like, maybe if I climb the bottom half perfect, I'll be able to figure out the top half.
Wow.
But like there's not enough time in 6 minutes to preview the whole wall. And even like there was like the top of the men's final at that IMS comp had like a full on double knee bar, no hands rest. And there was like an arrow on the volume that like if you got up there, you could see this arrow that like very much was like kind of telling you to move your body to the left
Yeah.
to like, and if you did that, you would find this like no hands knee bar at the lip of the roof.
Okay.
And like, and basically like we were saying to the climbers like, oh, did you see the knee bar? And like I remember Jakob Schubert and Paul were talking about the knee bar, and he was like, did you see the knee bar? And Jakob was like, man, I didn't even look at the top half of the route. He's like, I previewed the route until like the 10th quick draw, and then was just gonna kind of go from there and see what happened.
Wow.
So like you can't even do anything crazy on this wall. Like the Chamonix wall is kind of perfect because they can see the whole wall. It's like they can see if there's something complex, they can go figure it out. So I think you have the opportunity to express your style more. But I think to like overall address the question that you're asking, like about like what people get to do, I think it's like it's probably very important for the route setters to express their own style at the World Cup level. I think like there's an element that you need to fit into when you're setting a comp. Like obviously the result kind of comes before anything at certain comps, and at other comps like the show comes before the result. It depends on the environment that you're working within. Like at the end of the day, like it's a design challenge, so like you have to work within that. And if your goal is to like challenge the climbers in some unique way, then yeah, you can be more creative with your setting. You can kind of do whatever you want because the goal is to challenge them. But like if the goal is the result, then you need to maybe find the balance a little better. You know what I mean? You still want to
Hmm.
be creative and do yourself, but you also need to think about the function of the boulder. What is it actually going to do for your comp?
Okay. Cool. So at this point, like, I'm curious what's next for you. Are you looking to like lock down at a gym for a bit? Are you gonna keep doing the freelance thing, or maybe move somewhere else? What's going on?
So I'm setting Pan Am Games in 2 weeks. I got an internship for that. So that's like the
Awesome.
next kind of quote unquote international event that I'm doing. So I'll be on the lead team, I think, for that. So I'm super fired up on that. And that's in Montreal. And then I'm actually going to stay in Montreal. I've decided that I'm going to move there from Victoria. I spent like 6 weeks there this summer, setting at Alley Up, and also like I set like the Canadian training camp or whatever.
Yeah.
And I also like I drove back, I drove there and I drove back, and I like spent a week in Toronto and I spent a week in Calgary, and I was kind of just trying on some different options because I was looking for a change. Anyway, yeah, so I decided I'm gonna move to Montreal.
So what are you gonna be doing out there in Montreal?
So I'm going to be working for Jean-Marc de La Plante, who is the owner of Alley Up. And basically, I'm going to be the director of route setting for his gyms. So not everybody knows, but Jean-Marc is part owner of 4 gyms. Boulder House in Victoria, Up the Block in Toronto, Alley Up in Montreal, and Seven Bays in Halifax. So basically, my job is going to be as a resource to the 4 head setters of those gyms.
Huh.
So, like as you can imagine, when you run a business, you have like a whole lot of stuff to do, and anyone who owns a climbing gym knows that like one of the things you have to do is deal with your head root setter on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you want to make sure that they are well taken care of and that they have the holds that they need and the stuff that they need. And when you have 4 head root setters, this is like taking up a lot of your time. So basically my job is going to be to handle some of that stuff for Jean-Marc. At the same time, there's a bunch of like other kind of initiatives that we want to push forward with the 4 gyms. Like it's another thing that maybe not everybody knows, but all 4 gyms have the same circuit system for the grading of the boulders. So they use the exact same system with the exact same colors at all 4 gyms. And one of the big goals that we have is to harmonize those circuits so that if you climb a blue circuit boulder in Victoria, it feels the same as a blue circuit boulder in Halifax or in Montreal or in Toronto. Huh. So we want to create like a cohesive experience across all 4 gyms. And like not even just the grades, but we want to have similar style diversities. We want to have similar hold orders and types of holds in the gyms. And even we have some other stuff kind of in the works coming down the pipe that will even put some of the same wall angles at some of the gyms.
Cool.
So we're trying to do a bunch of cool stuff. We've got all these kind of crazy ideas. We'd like to do some like cross-national kind of tour de block comps where we'd have the same boulders at 3 or 4 of the different gyms. Okay. And people could compete all together. And you know, all this stuff. And at the same time, like we want our root setting teams at the 4 gyms to be the best equipped that they can be. So having somebody like myself as a constant resource is, I think, a nice service to those guys. Like obviously, like we have 4 amazing head root setters. Like anybody who knows guys knows they're really good. But being able to have like instant access to conversations about anything, I think, is maybe invaluable for some of these guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that sounds like an awesome thing to have as a head root setter. Does that mean you're going to be spending more time like behind a desk rather than on the wall, or how are you going to be spending your time?
So it's pretty cool. Like the other thing that I'm really psyched about with this job is that it's not actually quote unquote full time, because like one of the issues that I've had with other jobs is that I set comps a lot and my schedule is very busy and I'm around all the time. So me and Jean-Marc have come up with a really good way of kind of balancing what they need and what I need. And it's really good. So I know that like basically when I'm in Montreal, I'll probably set 2 days a week, like in the gym at Alley Up. And then I'll probably do like a day or 2 of office work that's relative to all 4 gyms. As well, I have like an allotted amount of time at each gym that I'll be there to set for them as well. So like I'll do clinics with their setters, just go review how stuff is going, maybe do comps or whatever. At this point, the whole arrangement is still very fluid. We've still got some stuff to figure out.
Yeah.
As far as we know, there's not too many like director of root settings.
Yeah, I can only think of a couple.
So it's a new space for both me and him, for Jean-Marc. So we're just kind of making it all work. But these are just some of the ideas that we want to do. We're pretty psyched.
Cool, man. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk, and I'm really excited for all the stuff you're going to be doing in the future. It sounds like maybe a year from now we could have another conversation, and you'd have a lot more stuff to talk about. So good luck with all that stuff. And I hope we'll get to see each other sometime soon.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, man. This was fun.
No problem. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, later.
Bye. That's it for this week's episode of Plastic Weekly. Thanks to Kaleb Thomas for answering my questions, and thanks to you guys for listening. Plastic Weekly is presented and produced by me, Tyler Norton. If you like this episode, please leave a review on iTunes or consider donating $1 or $2 each week to my Patreon at patreon.com/plasticweekly. Make sure you visit plasticweekly.com to find footnotes, references, and other bonus content related to our episodes, including a link to the video of the so-called Jody Mile Mario go-kart problem. I've never heard that name for it, and I've already linked to it for a previous episode, but it's a classic of Canadian root setting, and you should check it out. If you want to get in touch with me, you can leave a comment at plasticweekly.com, and you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can send me an email to tyler@plasticweekly.com with your comments, concerns, questions, compliments. Just tell me you're out there, somewhere. Good luck to everyone competing this weekend, including at the Lead and Speed World Cup in Xiamen. We'll be thinking about you. Talk to you next week.